Hello, very good evening. It's Ian Dale at Drive every weekday between 4 and 8 here on LBC. Well, coming up over the next hour, we're going to talk to the acting leader of the Labour Party, Harriet Harman, because believe it or not, it's only 11 days since the election took place. In those 11 days, Labour has really, I think, gone back to its roots almost, trying to think, well, what is the point of the Labour Party? What should the links be between the Labour Party and the unions? They're questioning almost their very existence. We'll be talking to Harriet Harman about that and much more over the course of the next half an hour. (7:05) Harriet, welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Now, it's been a fairly tumultuous 11 days for everyone in the Labour Party. Do you still feel as if you're in a bit of a state of shock?
Not really now, because we're on the front foot moving forward. We've got to be getting up and opposing the government, because though we applied for the job of government, we didn't get that job. We got the job of official opposition, and it is important to hold the government to account, so we're doing that. We're also getting on with a real thorough lessons learned exercise, because not only do we need to understand why in so many areas we were rejected by the electorate, but we weren't expecting it. Why did we not know we were about to be rejected in such a thoroughgoing way? And of course we're getting on to elect our new leader and deputy.
Did you really not know? Because according to all the newspaper stories that go back into the whys and wherefores of what happened on election night, people in Ed Miliband's office did know, but they chose not to tell him, and presumably not you.
No, I just think that's really not true. And also all the polls were saying that we were neck and neck, and therefore the electoral arithmetic was going to work out such that we were going to win. I mean, there'd been some outlying polls saying we were doing incredibly well, and some outlying polls saying we were doing particularly badly. But overall, all the polls had us winning, and therefore it was hard when we didn't have anything that felt as if it was countering it, coming up from all our conversations on the doorstep. And I think the Tories thought we were winning as well. So it wasn't just us. And, you know, we've really got to go out and about to those areas and discuss with people and listen to the brutal truth of why they're saying they didn't like us.
Do you think that holding a leadership contest and trying to learn all those lessons at the same time really worked? Wouldn't it have been better if Ed Miliband had done what Michael Howard did in 2005 and stayed on for 6 months to allow the party to have this debate without sort of everyone being distracted by all the runners and riders in a leadership contest?
Well, I think as soon as someone has said they're no longer going to be the leader, whether it's 6 weeks or 6 months, the leadership race is on. So you don't forestall a leadership race by postponing the date at which it starts. And we are going to have a very thoroughgoing debate. But the feeling was that by the end, towards the end of the year, by the autumn, we really ought to have a new leader in place.
Well, let's look at one or two of the implications of that. You seem to be very keen on opening up the leadership contest, not just to sort of the traditional trade unions and Labour Party members. You've introduced this new affiliate membership where voters can pay £3 to help choose the Labour leader. Why haven't you gone further on that and done what the Socialist Party did in France and have basically a national open primary?
Well, we changed the system, and we changed it back in 2014. And it used to be the case that we had an electoral college, which is a third coming from trade union affiliates, a third of the votes coming from MPs, and a third coming from Labour Party members. And that meant that sometimes you could have, you know, not just 1 or 2 votes, but 5 votes. And it meant however few people voted in the affiliate section, they still got a third of what contributed towards choosing the leader. So we changed it to 1 person, 1 vote. All the votes are equal. And you can get a vote by being a member of the Labour Party, and incidentally 36,000 more people have joined just since Thursday the 7th of May. You can get a vote as a member of the Labour Party. You can get a vote as a registered supporter, which means you say, I'm a supporter of the Labour Party. We check that you're on the electoral register. You pay £3 and you get a vote. So that is opening it up very widely.
But I could do that, couldn't I?
Yes, you could. You could, if you support the Labour Party. Do you support the Labour Party,
I
Ian?
don't support any political party,
Well, then you
Harriet.
wouldn't tick the box, which actually says I support the Labour
anyone
Party.
can say they do. I mean, the Tory party, in theory, could try and rig your leadership election, couldn't they? They could just try and get all of their members to do this. I mean, they've got enough money to do it.
Well, I've always suspected that there are a few Conservative central office people who've bought membership of the Labour Party in order to receive my emails. So that's open to people to do.
Free.
Yeah, that's open to people to do now. But actually, the truth is that we want to give as many possible people a say in voting on the leadership election if they support the Labour Party. But beyond that, we want to make sure that the hustings, which are the meetings from which all the candidates for leadership and deputy leadership appear at, that they are an open process. Because last time, the way we've always done it is when we need to choose a new leader and deputy, the question we ask is, who do we like? Who do we feel comfortable with? Now, we are obsessed with politics and we love the Labour Party. That is not the normative position for most people. So we've got to hear from people outside.
Absolutely, but wouldn't that be a good reason to hold a national primary like they did in France, which, as far as I understand, it was very successful, where anybody in the country could vote. Therefore, whoever is elected as the new leader would have a complete mandate.
Well, we had this big discussion about how we should have the new procedure last year, and we decided it last year, and we decided we would open it up greatly, but actually you'd still have to be a supporter of the Labour Party to vote. But we're now opening up again and saying, actually, you can come into the process by coming to our hustings meetings if you voted Tory or SNP or didn't vote at all.
These are going to be televised?
Yes, because I think actually the truth is that what we need is a leader who can actually not only appeal to us, but actually can get their message across and listen to people and reach out to people. And we need to see that happening in the contest rather than just find out after we've done the election. So we're opening it up.
And that didn't really happen in the last one when Ed Miliband won.
No, and Ed Miliband changed the rules to what they are now. And also it didn't happen when I was elected. So I just had to go round and speak to really nice Labour Party members in Labour cities.
Wow.
And I didn't go out and about under the glare of television trying to reach out to people who don't support us.
Why is it that there are more candidates for deputy leader and there's a sort of bigger spread of candidates than there is for leader at the moment?
Well, I think there's a big spread of candidates all round, and it's for people to put themselves forward, and I'm running the process and staying neutral about it. But I think that it's starting the process of allowing people to say to us in a brutally honest fashion why they didn't vote for us, so they can come to these hustings and actually they can say to our leadership candidates to their face, this is why we didn't vote for you, and what do you think about that?
Do you think it was a mistake in retrospect to have this threshold where you have to get, is it 15% of Labour MPs to nominate you?
35.
35. Now, the likes of Andy Burnham and Yvette Cooper will probably find that very easy to do, but I wonder whether some of the other candidates will find that quite so easy. Might you not run the risk of having a far too narrow a field in both contests?
Well, that's what was said last time, but we had a good field of candidates. And actually what you want to do is you want to get the balance, because really the person who's elected leader needs to have the confidence of at least 15% of the Parliamentary Labour Party. I think would be quite hard to be leader if you had fewer than 15% of the MPs supporting you. But thereafter, the vote is just one person, one vote, and MPs get the same weight as everybody else. Everybody's equal in the vote.
Going back to the election campaign, was there a moment when you thought, this is going wrong, I need to speak to Ed about this and suggest how it can go right, or were you sort of the whole way through just confident that it was going fine?
Well, I think that we felt that we had a good campaign. I mean, it might have been a good campaign, but it clearly was not good enough in terms of the result. But that it was an energetic campaign and we were focusing on living standards in the NHS. And actually, the truth is, there's no point me being wise, implying I was wise before the event, because we didn't see it coming, and I was waiting to go on the 10 o'clock news to discuss our process in going into government, only to hear that the exit poll said we flipping well weren't going into government. David Cameron was, because we were 7 points behind in the exit poll. And then it got worse than that.
When you saw that, was it a sort of empty stomach feeling, or you just thought, well, what do I say when I go? I mean, I remember interviewing you on LBC on election night, not long after that exit poll, and you were clearly shocked by it.
Well, I was, but actually exit polls have been wrong in the past. I mean, they were wrong before 92, but actually the exit poll was wrong in 1992. And Paddy Ashdown was on the TV saying, oh, these polls are completely wrong. I'm going to eat my hat if they're right. And, you know, the SNP was saying they're wrong. So I kind of wondered whether it was possible to take a crumb of comfort from everybody else saying they were wrong. But actually, once I heard that, I thought, that is it. It is so different from what was said beforehand. And we've got to understand whether or not the polls had never got it right, or whether or not people, the undecideds at the last minute, decided they were going to make up their mind and they were not deciding for us. We've got to work that out.
And what was the first thing that went through your head when you saw the so-called Ed Stone?
Well, I'm not a critic of the Edstone, and I don't think it's the reason why we lost the election. I mean, obviously, we've got to have a lessons learned exercise.
Club there.
No, but we're going to have a lessons learned exercise, but I would be very surprised if a huge swathe of people said, well, you know what, we were planning to vote Labour. As soon as we saw the Edstone, we changed our mind. I mean, it's something for people to have a go at. But actually, if we'd have won the election, it would have, in hindsight, seemed to be a very good idea. In the context of us having a thumping loss, it looks like not a good idea. But I didn't criticise it at the time.
Not the equivalent of the Sheffield rally?
No, because it was it was basically promising to keep our promise. It wasn't promises. It wasn't being triumphalist and saying we're going to win, which is how the Sheffield rally was perceived.
OK, more from you in a moment, Harriet Harman. Thank you very much indeed. You can watch us live at lbc.co.uk as well. This is LBC. It's 16 minutes past 7.
This is Adam Moore in the LBC Travel Centre. Good evening. Well, it's all about the M25 at the moment, anti-clockwise, still very slow from junction 15, the M4, round towards the A3 at junction 10 after an accident earlier on. It's around 30 to 40 minutes of delays there. Big queues as well, clockwise approaching the Enfield exit at junction 25. That's the A10 exit. There was an accident there around 3 o'clock this afternoon in the Holmesdale tunnel. That's still being cleared up, so just the outside 2 lanes are open in the tunnel. The queues all the way back past the A1M at junction 23, with delays of around 45 to 50 minutes to get through those queues. Now, because of that, the entry slip to the clockwise M25 at junction 25 from the A10 is closed. The A10 itself very slow through Cheshunt down towards the motorway, and Great Cambridge Road also very slow through Enfield all the way up to the M25. Greenford, the A40 queuing into town, very slow after a car broke down earlier at the Greenford flyover, so do expect 20 minutes of delays. Keeping London moving. The next update is in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel.
With Citrix Go-To Meeting, bringing your clients closer to your business.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
17 minutes past 7. You can watch us live at lbc.co.uk. Harriet Harman, the acting leader of the Labour Party, is with us. Harriet, when was the last time you spoke to Ed Miliband?
Yesterday, I think. I actually lose track of time. Completely.
So he's back from Ibiza?
Yes, he is.
How is he? Because, I mean, I'm trying to imagine what a shattering blow it must have been for him personally, let alone everybody else. Obviously, every Labour candidate that lost, everybody associated with the Labour Party would have gone through some sort of trauma. But for him to go through that must have been quite something.
Well, I think, you know, nobody could say that Ed Miliband didn't really put absolutely everything in from the moment that he became leader of the Labour Party. He absolutely gave it his heart and soul. So it's obviously, you know, very disappointing for all of us, but doubly disappointing for him, because he was obviously hoping and expecting to be Prime Minister, and wanted to be able to do all the things that he feels and we feel need to be done that won't be done now, and some things that are being done that we don't want to see.
Is he taking the blame for the defeat on his own shoulders?
Well, he said, when he said he was stepping down, he said he accepted responsibility because he's the leader, and a lot of responsibility does fall on the leader's shoulders. But I think he was unstinting in his commitment and is a thoroughly decent person, and we have to look deep into what actually happened. And it might well be that there are different things that happened in different parts of the country, and that it's not at all the obvious answers that we thought.
How much do you think it was down to him personally?
I don't know, because I don't want to second-guess what people think. I don't want to say what people think. I want to hear what people think.
You must have a view yourself.
Well, I don't know. People say, it was because of the economy and because people in England didn't want to see the SNP running things, and certainly that is what people said on the doorstep to an extent.
But wasn't it
also perhaps there was
that
something more underpinning that, which is a sense of who is on my side, who connects with me, and that whole question of identification. So I don't know, and I think that that's not just because I haven't got suspicions. It's just that we have to listen to people with open ears and open minds, not go out there and prove that we were right in our view about why people didn't vote for us.
A lot of people said to me during the course of the campaign on the doorstep, and this came from canvassers of small parties, saying people keep saying we can't imagine Ed Miliband as Prime Minister, a bit like Neil Kinnock in 1992. Do you think there was an element of that?
Well, there was a lot of criticism of Ed, but actually during the campaign a lot of people changed their views of him when they were actually able to see him on the hustings. And he'd had very bad poll ratings, but they turned around to a considerable degree. And it is always difficult for people to see an opposition leader as Prime Minister. The Prime Minister looks prime ministerial, and the opposition leader looks like he's not prime ministerial. So, I mean, people didn't think Margaret Thatcher looked prime ministerial, but she still managed to get elected.
Well, when you spoke to Ed Miliband, did he indicate what his future plans were?
Actually, now I come to think of it, I think I've just done text exchange. I sometimes forget the verb, whether I've spoken to somebody, but for the sake of accuracy and forensic truth, I think we've just done text exchanges.
But has he indicated what his plans are?
Well, you know, he's just come back from being away for a short break, and he's carrying on to be MP for Doncaster.
OK. Now, I don't know if you've seen on the New Statesman website, they've done some calculations as to the level of swing that Labour would need at the 2020 election to get back into power. If you take Scotland out of the equation, you need a 9.45% swing in England, or if you keep Scotland in its 8.45%. Now, that's more than Tony Blair got in his heyday. Do you accept that the next Labour leader is effectively going to have two goes at it?
No, I don't. And I do remember, and you'll remember, Ian, that in 1992 people said we were finished, we'd never be a party of government again, it was all absolutely hopeless, we were out for a generation. I mean, everybody said that, and a lot of people in the party actually believed that. And I do remember sitting down with Gordon Brown and Tony Blair, and Tony only half jokingly saying, and he'd been a very successful barrister before he became an MP, you know, him saying, we're never going to get back into government. This is after 92. We're never going to get back in. We could be doing, what's the point of being a lost political generation? We might as well be doing something different and useful. And actually, we stayed and fought our way back. So I've been in a situation where you look over the edge of a precipice and everybody's saying it's absolutely impossible. But the point is, if you respond rightly to defeat and really take it on board, then out of that defeat can come the future victory.
When you look at the fact that there are going to be long overdue boundary changes coming up, which in England will benefit the Conservatives, how confident can you be that one of the current crop of Labour leadership candidates will actually be the next Prime Minister?
Well, we'll be determined out of the process to get the right leader for the Labour Party, and that person will get our backing to oppose the government and show what they're doing wrong, but also set out a vision for things being better in Britain. And, you know, it is a very disappointing result. There's no doubt it was a very, very big setback. There's no, you know, gilding the lily on that. But actually, we've still got a task to do. And actually, we don't want a one-party state in this country. We don't want it, oh, well, let's just hand over government to the Conservatives. After all, they're born to rule. Let them get on with it. No, thank you.
How shocked were you when Chuka Umunna announced that he was withdrawing from the contest?
Well, I kind of want to do a bit of a self-denying ordinance of commenting on people who are in the candidacy and not in the candidacy. No, I know, but you know...
Did he speak to you beforehand?
No, he didn't. But so basically, you know, people don't need to speak to me if they're going to run, and they don't need to speak to me if they're going to drop out. And I just, you know, I have to be completely neutral in the process, but to make sure that it's a really good process with as many as people possible voting and the public being able to have their say. See, the other thing is that we need to go, when we have our hustings, you know, not to Birmingham city centre where we won many seats, but to places like Nuneaton where we got a thumping. That's where we need to go.
And that was the moment. I mean, I can remember sitting here on election night saying live on air, that's the moment that I think the Conservatives will form the next government. It was the Basildon of this election.
That's when it was evident that it was worse than the exit poll, and that it was not even a minority Tory administration, it was a majority.
I know you're not going to comment on individual leadership candidates, I quite understand that, but do you not think with all the work on equality the Labour Party's done over the years, it's scandalous that you've never elected a female leader?
Well, I wouldn't call it scandalous, because I think, we do want to be sure that we have women as part...
What would you call it then?
I think that basically it's like for a long time politics was really a men-only game, despite the fact that Margaret Thatcher had been Prime Minister. The overwhelming majority of MPs are men. The overwhelming majority of people in the Cabinet have been men. And so women are kind of late arrivals in politics. Welcome new arrivals, but we're still quite late arrivals. But, I do think it's important to have a balanced team in the Cabinet, in the Shadow Cabinet, and in our leadership team, balanced, i.e. women and men. I think the days of a men-only leadership team ought to be behind us.
But there could be that after this result, couldn't there?
There could, but I hope there won't be, because basically we're doing the leadership and deputy leadership election at the same time. If we were doing one after the other, once we got the first one, we'd know how we'd get the balanced team. But the general feeling was people are not got any appetite for having one great big election and then having another great big election.
Okay.
So it was a difficult decision.
Well, just a reminder, you can watch us at lbc.co.uk as well. Now, when Len McCluskey, the leader of Unite, says he may pull funding if Labour doesn't elect the correct leader, is that a help or a hindrance?
Well, I think, he's entitled to say what he says, but we are going to get the leader according to the processes which the trade unions and all parts of the party have agreed. So we are, by definition, going to get the correct leader, because we're going to have the correct process to get the correct leader.
But there's an implicit threat there, and that's exactly what people think of the trade unions, sort of bully boy unions, trying to get their way.
Nobody's going to feel
he's bullied Jim Murphy out of his job, hasn't he?
Well, I think that basically we are going to... I don't think there's any question of them disaffiliating and not supporting the Labour Party, because actually they know that when the only benefit to people who will benefit if funding is pulled away from the Labour Party is the Tories, and the people who always lose out when the Tories are in are working people. So I don't think there's any way that they're going to be pulling their money out, and he's already said that today. In
Scotland, you have lost one of your best campaigners. Jim Murphy's not an MP anymore. He's not going to be leading Labour in Scotland anymore. What does it say about the Labour Party that you can afford to lose somebody of his calibre?
Well, we've lost many people of good calibre. We've lost a whole team in Scotland, except for one, Ian Murray. We've lost Douglas Alexander. We've lost Margaret Curran. It is a very, very disappointing result of that, there's no doubt. And therefore, how we go forward in Scotland is a major task. But again, I don't think people in Scotland either will want a one-party state. There needs to be checks and balances, and out of that, Labour will rebuild in Scotland, I'm sure.
Do you think Labour, though, does need to look again at its relationship with the trade unions, and is that something that this leadership contest might be about?
We have looked again at our relationship with unions. That's why we no longer have a situation where a third of the votes for the leadership belong to the trade unions, even if there's only very few of them actually vote. So we have changed that. We've also changed the situation where it used to be the case that the unions would send out the ballot papers to their members, and they could just send it out with a magazine full of the attributes of one person they're proposing and not mentioning any of the other candidates, and that would then include the ballot paper. And we're changing that so that the ballots are all sent out independently by the Electoral Reform Service.
Now, you were Shadow Culture Secretary in the last Parliament. How worried are you about the future of the BBC under this government? John Whittingdale is now the Culture Secretary, has expressed some fairly vociferous, fairly trenchant views about the licence fee.
I am very worried about the BBC. I think that the BBC is a fantastic... I don't know what to call it. It's more than an organisation. It is...
Institution.
It's more than an institution. I think it's loved and admired not only in this country but all around the world, and it's it's trusted on the news. It generates great cultural activity. And actually, I am worried because the new culture secretary looks like he's set to knock a big hole in the finances of the BBC. And actually, the BBC is, it's like if it ain't broke, why try and fix it? Why pull the plug out from under it? Of course, it needs some minor changes, but they should be independent and have their own source of financing.
Do you think there is an attitude among some Conservatives that this is payback time for the BBC?
Yes, well, I think that there are some Conservatives who don't like the BBC because it's a public service broadcaster, which is not about profit making and is not in the market. But that's the reason why I think people like the BBC, because it is a public service broadcaster. It's auntie, for heaven's sake. And I think that they got it wrong, but some of them just want the market to dominate, and that would threaten public service broadcasting.
Let's move on from auntie to mummy, because you announced this afternoon that you are mother of the house, which I suspect that's going to haunt you for some time. But I think it's at the end of next year you are going to be the longest-serving female MP in the history of the House of Commons, which must be a source of pride for you. But
I didn't know that until I heard you out that. I felt like I needed to lie down to have a rest when I heard that. I thought, my God.
You don't look as if you're about to sort of retire on us. But what does the future hold for you? When this leadership contest is over, would you want to still be in the shadow cabinet, or is that you done in frontline politics?
Well, I will not be in the shadow cabinet. I'll be on the backbenches, but I'll be Member of Parliament for Camberwell and Peckham. And one of the things that I think is so odd is when people leave being on the front bench, that they say they're leaving frontline politics. To be an MP is frontline politics. It's an amazing privilege and an honour.
Alan Johnson, for example, who I think, if he could be persuaded to come back on the front bench for Labour, that would do you so much more good than probably anything else. But he has kind of left politics. He's writing his books, he's doing the Andrew Neil show and all the rest of it. He's not in frontline politics in the same way that he once was. Is that what you're going to be doing?
I think he is, because he's out there with Labour values. He's elected as a Labour MP, and he's just not doing it from the front bench, and he's doing it in his inimitable and very popular Alan Johnson way. If I can emulate even half of that, I will be very pleased.
Now, you've said that you're still in a bit of a state of shock. You're clearly still devastated by the election result, but I get the impression that you rather enjoy these stints as acting leader.
Well, I definitely did not want to be acting leader. I wanted to be Deputy Prime Minister. I wanted Ed Miliband to be Prime Minister. This is way off what we actually wanted. However, when the mantle falls on your shoulders of responsibility, people don't want to see us tearing our hair out and running around in circles. They want to see us getting on with getting a new leader and deputy with a good process. They want to see us opposing the Tories. They want to see us having a thorough debate but not going off the rails. And that's my task for the moment until September the 12th.
Harriet Harman, thank you very much indeed.